The Halion Chronicles. The Protectorate of Hellas stands at the edge of war. Titans stir, and ancient machines whisper in the void. Beneath the crimson grays of Thanatos, fate is cast in steel and circuitry. The Olympians walk among the mortals, spinning their schemes. Myth do not endure, they break, they burn, they fall. Only those bold enough to defy fate may earn their place among legend. Your cyber saga journey continues now. The Last Jug. Thrish followed the Mistios, blending into the crowd and taking up an inconspicuous position among the jumbles of crates and barrels stacked near the edge of the market. His sharp nose twitched at the scent of sweat and wine drifting through the air, guiding his gaze to a nearby taberna cloaked in the shadows, illuminated partly by a few braziers. A faded sign reading Last Jug in haphazard Greek script hung crookedly above its door, etched with symbols worn by time. In the murk of its doorway, these Mistios, a ragtag group of mercenaries from Camerca, Lesbos, or even as far as the island of Crotone, gathered like wolves at the carcass. They brotherly slapped the Mistios gone astray on the head and handed him a jug of wine, wetting the breastplate of their drunk companion. Their hearty laughter rang out across the place, the deep timbre of their voices jarring against Tuul's eerie high winds passing the canopy and frantic bustling of the dead market. The bronze breastplates of these Mistios gleamed dully under the sparse luminescence of the white Luna and the red glowing Thanatos. Their chitons were dust-stained and frayed, refracting the light arrhythmically to their swaying movement and laughter. They gestured animately with calloused hands, likely exchanging stories of distant battles, glories and bounties with spirited fervor. "Not my concern, as long as he pays," Thrish could overhear with his fine ears. The others cassinated and raising their jugs, taking another sip. "If he doesn't pay, we slit his throat for employment with his brother," a towering, muscular woman barked almost as a command. "Hey, Dominatra, that will do," the others echoed one by one, raising their jugs. At the taberna's threshold, more of them lounged on crates and broken barrels, their gladii propped against the wall, glinting with the fangs of a dragon. "To the brothers of Ares! We die and triumph together!" another man shouted in the crowd, and was met with frantic cheers. The wine was spilled easily, as their gladii spilled blood. Thrish remembered the time he served as an auxiliary in the Camercan Strati. These mercenaries had seen a lot of vile combat, and these types of warbands were able to fight in formations, as well as marauders, the latter being their preferred style. Their only moral code was to protect their Cayman in arms. Many Archons had gambled and lost trying to gain control over these promiscuous soldiers. Whoever paid them gained their steel, for a time, but they were effective, and payment could be replaced by condoning their plundering after a campaign. So many potentates of Hellas pondered their employment, especially in dire straits. So many of them died when the pots stopped coming. Thrish's mind drifted back to days when he served as a scout in Archon Araron's army. He remembered the harsh glare of the sun over the Shardlands, the relentless heat beating down on him as he crouched low in the rugged terrain, his sharp eyes scanning for any signs of enemy movement. The days scorching, the nights freezing, and the shards swirling evermore, lacerating and crawling beneath the leather. It was during one of those grueling campaigns that he first encountered the Mistios, the auxiliary force of mercenaries hired by the Strati. They were a fierce and motley crew, their armor a patchwork of scavenged pieces and their weapons gleaming with the keen edge of relentless use. These Mistios moved with a brutal efficiency, fueled by pots and bounty, capable of forming disciplined man-walls that could hold the line against overwhelming odds, then melting into the wilderness to launch guerrilla strikes with lethal precision. Thrish remembered a particular skirmish, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning wood and coppery tang of blood. The Mistios had fought like demons, their war cries blending into a symphony of violence and victory. Archon Araron had attached a group of Mistios to his own scouting unit. Their mission was to penetrate deep into Shardland territory, to waylay and eradicate smaller formations of raiders before they could regroup or pose a larger threat. They moved under the cover of the icy night, the shadows their ally, and the silence their cloak. Thrish led the way, his sharp senses attuned to every rustle in the rugged terrain, every distant clink of metal. The Mistios followed closely, their presence a reassuring weight at his back. Cassander, the scarred leader of the Mistios, had taken a keen interest in Thrish's scouting techniques, often matching his pace and whispering strategies in the dark. Thrish's senses led them to their enemies, and his familiarity with the area spared a few lives. One night, they came upon a Sikutan encampment, nestled in a rocky hollow. Thrish's heart raced as he signaled for a halt, his eyes narrowing to pick out the sentries among the flickering firelight. Araron had commanded them to eliminate the Sikutan plague that disrupted trade and festered discontent among the villagers of the Metharana savanna to the east. The plan was simple and brutal. The Mistios would circle around and strike from the rear, while Thrish and his scouts created a distraction at the front. He remembered the glow in Cassander's eyes as he gave the order to strike. As they prepared to launch their attack, Thrish couldn't help but notice the eerie calm that had settled over these Mistios. Their faces, hardened by countless battles, showed no fear, only cold determination. Cassander's glowing eyes met Thrish's, and with a curt nod, the assault began. Thrish and his scout emerged from the shadows, launching a volley of obsidian spears that sent the enemy camp into chaos. Cries of alarm rose into the night as the raiders scrambled to defend themselves. At that moment, the Mistios struck from behind, their formation shifting seamlessly from disciplined ranks to savage, marauding force. The clash of steel and the screams of the dying filled the air. Thrish moved through the fray with lethal precision, his obsidian cleaver flashing in the firelight. He fought side by side with the Mistios, their combat styles blending in a deadly dance. And then he faced the Phanasteel, a big feral tiger domesticated and tortured by the Sikutan. The beast leapt forward and pinned Thrish down before he could dodge, sharp fangs exposed, ready to rip Thrish's head off. The Mistios, bound by a blood oath to their companions, fearlessly jumped onto the maddened cat and thrust their spears into the cornered beast. Most Sikutans, now crawling on the ground, the Mistios played with the Phanasteel for sport. Thrish had time to get up, regaining his composure and picking up his obsidian cleaver. He watched the Mistios poking and laughing at the moaning and defending cat. He knew they expected him to finish off the cat. With a precise swing of his cleaver, blood and as sweat gushed over the elated Mistios. "Glory to Ares!" they shouted ecstatically, and turned to search the dead for pots and terminate the wounded. Such was the grueling routine of that campaign against the Sikutan. The Mistios were brutal and unrelenting, as much as their care was for their sworn companions. By the next impact of Thanatos, the Sikutan camp was nothing but smoldering tents and dead, scattered raiders. Thrish stood amidst the wreckage, catching his breath as Helios illuminated the aftermath of their brutal efficiency. The Phanestiel's upper chest was almost severed by his strike. Cassander approached. His armor spattered with blood, and his expression was one of grim satisfaction, calm, almost joyful. "Well done, Rapman," Cassander said, clapping Thrish on the shoulder. "Your scouting skills and our blade could make you swim in pots. After this campaign, if you want to join us, I will speak for you with Herakala. We need someone with your senses and reflexes." He pointed to the Phanestiel, grinning ironically. "Think about it carefully, though. The oath cannot be undone." He continued in his deep voice, with an accent that betrayed him as a Crotonean. Thrish had sailed from Klespos to Crotone in his younger days, and ever since he could hear the olive stones in the Crotonean's muttering. Thrish nodded, passing out of his memories, focusing back on the Mistios in the taberna in front of him. He felt a sense of pride and a bond forged in the crucible of these frays. Those days with the Mistios had taught him much about the art of war, and the memories of their shared victory and mutual respect lingered with him as he registered their drunkenness. But he knew that the life of a Mistios was not cut out for him. He belonged to the Shardlands, Lerqua, the Yellowstones, and the riches that he could smell in the Suban tunnels and caverns beneath Tuul and the Shardlands. Thank you for listening to the Halion Chronicles. You journeyed until the end and likely enjoyed your travels through this episode. Let us know with a like and share it with fellow travelers of Halion. Never miss an episode, subscribe and turn on the notification to stay ahead of the unfolding saga. For free additional content, lore deep dives and more stories from Halion, visit our Substack at halionchronicles.substack.com.